I got something a little bit different for you today, folks. We're going to be taking a look at how I make a YouTube thumbnail. And if you've wondered, like, why do YouTube thumbnails look the way that they do, hopefully this will give you a little bit of insight. And the product that we're making a thumbnail for today is this Axis Motors Octocopter. And the first principle in making a YouTube thumbnail is that a thumbnail will always get more clicks and more engagement if it has a human face in it. Humans are primed by millions of years of evolution to notice and pay attention to human faces and expressions. And that is why so many YouTube thumbnails have the, let's just call it the YouTube O face, where the YouTuber has like their mouth open in a big, a big expression of, like this one with Conan making a look. Like that just grabs your brain. Your brain's like, what is that guy reacting to? And you can't help it. And it kind of sucks. But YouTubers need clicks. The algorithm heavily rewards click-through rate. Like all of these thumbnails that I'm looking at and not clicking on, YouTube knows. And these videos are going to do slightly worse because people aren't clicking on them, if people aren't clicking on them. So we want to have a face in the thumbnail. A nice product shot is fine, and it may get the job done depending on the product, but a thumbnail with a face in it, making an expression will always do better. So the simplest way to go about it is to just take a frame from the video and make it the thumbnail. But this doesn't always work. For example, video frames are often a little bit blurry if the subject is in motion. And the product is not always framed very well. The composition is not always ideal. But let's see if we can find something to work with. I'm just going to step through this kind of frame by frame and look for a good expression. We want a good, see, this is no good because the product is blurry. Now the product is relatively unblurry, but my facial expression, is that like a grabby facial expression? No, see, eyes need to be open, because you want the person's brain thinking that you're making eye contact with them. We notice when other people are looking at us. Blurry, let's just keep looking. It's too bad the product's upside down. That facial expression could work. Eyes wide. Any facial expression where you can see the white of the eye around the pupil is going to make people look. That I don't think any of these are really going to work, though, I gotta say. Yeah, it's too bad. So let's set that aside for now, and let's just try to find a good product shot. And again, you could certainly just get your camera out and take a product shot separately, but it is easiest to be able to reuse the product shot from the video. It just saves a little bit of work. And I always try when I record a video to make sure that there are some product shots that I could use for the thumbnail. Boom, okay. So let's export that. And we will right-click and edit in Photoshop. So here's the next thing I do. The next thing I do, well, we're going to drag this on there, fine. Then we're going to Control-J to copy that, just to make it a layer of its own. And then I'm going to Control-Shift-A, which is the Camera Raw filter. Yeah. And I use the Camera Raw filter even though this is not a raw image, because the tools in the Camera Raw filter are a very good way of manipulating, and I don't know of another easy way to make these manipulations in Photoshop. So the first thing I do is I zoom it out to a very small size, because what's going to look good is a YouTube thumbnail in this size on screen is different than what's going to look good if you're zoomed in. In fact, oftentimes if you zoom in, it looks like crap, but that's not how most people are going to engage with it. So I'm going to zoom it out to a small size, and the first thing I do is I take the texture up, and that does kind of a contrast enhancement on the image. Look at the difference. It's actually pretty subtle in this particular image. Let's just crank it all the way up. And that's to kind of make details stand out. That high contrast is going to help catch people's eye as they're scrolling. We don't want to make the skin look unnatural, but that's pretty good. And I'll also go to detail, and I'll raise the sharpening up. Yeah. Now, as I said, if we zoom in on this, this probably is going to look over sharpened and crappy. It's not as bad as I thought, but in the smaller size that people are going to see, it's going to be much more eye-grabbing. The next thing I'm going to do is I like to bring the shadows up because I think there's not a lot of shadows in this image, to be fair, but it brings out detail in the black areas. And I think that more detail that people can see, the more likely it is to catch their eye. Let's check the black level. That's just yeah. I'm just trying to think, you know, what's going to catch my eye as I'm scrolling and make me stop. And then oftentimes I will adjust the exposure a little bit up and bring the highlights a little down. See, that to me, that's a more muted image, and I think it's lowering that highlights makes the orange pop out more though, whereas raising the highlights makes the orange not pop out as much. And raising the highlights is also making the background sort of disappear. So we'll try to find a sweet spot there. And then I'll adjust the vibrance up until the skin tones start to look weird, and then bring it back down a little till the skin tones look. See, this is desaturated skin tones. It looks unhealthy and doesn't grab your eye. As you raise the vibrance, eventually the skin tones will look weird, and then I just want the skin tones to look slightly weird. And the reason for that, again, is that it's going to grab your eye and make you stop and consider clicking on the video. You don't want them so weird that they look like, what the hell was this guy doing? Like, that to me just looks objectively bad. But I want the skin tones to be just a little abnormal, because you will notice if someone's skin is a weird color. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the color mixer, and the color mixer will let me adjust the saturation of individual colors in the image. So one thing I can do is, what I'll do is I'll crank the saturation and I'll look at which parts of the image kind of go bonkers, and it lets me know what I'm affecting. So oftentimes shadows are a little bit blue compared to highlights. And so by bringing saturation of blues down, you see the difference there? Look at the difference. There's blue in the shadows. By bringing the saturation of the blues down, we make the whole image more neutral across its left to right and so forth. We got some green here in the pigtail, and I'm going to go to the hue section of the color mixer, and I'm going to see if I can tweak that green closer to yellow or orange. Now, what else am I affecting? I don't see anything else moving. Skin tones don't have green in them. So I'm going to just tweak that over to yellow to try and, like, there's no green anywhere else in the image. And we've also, for some reason, got a little bit of green here, which I think is a little distracting. So we're just going to move those greens over to yellow. There's a little bit of yellow here that I kind of don't like. It's bouncing. I think it's bouncing from the orange. Maybe. I'm not sure where it's coming from, to be honest. Can we desaturate that without affecting anything? What else gets affected? Okay, so we're taking out some of the saturation here on the top, which is a little annoying. But I don't like that yellow here in the shadows. It makes it look kind of dirty. So we'll see if we can desaturate that just a little and get rid of that without desaturating the top too much. That seems okay. And then annoyingly, we've got red motors, but orange here. That's a little annoying. That doesn't go well together. But I don't think we can change the hue of the red without affecting skin tones. Oh, that's not too bad. See, that's bad, but if we push that a little towards the orange, it actually makes the skin tones look, it actually undoes some of the vibrance change to the skin tone. So we're going to push these motors towards orange to make the color a little more consistent with the, yeah, that's pretty good. Now we've got a little bit more of a two-tone. What's this blue here? Blue and aqua there. We'll go to saturation. What happens if we desaturate aqua? Oh, it's more shadows. We'll desaturate aqua completely. Yeah, and we can A/B that. Here it is, full screen. And then at more sort of thumbnail size. It's not a spectacular thumbnail though, is it? Because there's really nothing to grab your eye. Like at this size, you can kind of say, oh, that's interesting. That's a Cinewhoop. It's an octo. At the smaller size, it's just not as eye-grabbing. Really needs a human face. Well, let me show you a way to deal with that. Let's find a human face that sort of works. Oh, there you go. Joshua is staring right at. I wouldn't really use this, but let me show you the technique anyway. So I'm going to export that, and I'm going to edit in Photoshop. Photoshop has a fantastic tool called Select Subject, and it'll do a pretty damn good job of automatically selecting the subject of the image. I usually like to keep my chair in the image. For this one, I think it's not going to work so good. So what we're going to do then is we're going to select the wand tool by pressing W, and I'm going to shift W to cycle through the wand tools till I get to this one, the wand brush, and I'm going to hold down the Alt key to subtract from selection, and I'm going to just move that in, and it's going to do a decent job of selecting my outline. And then there's another one up here that on my ear, we're going to just make sure it gets my ear. And let's check other places here. It's screwed up a little bit. We'll push that in. Oh, that's too far. Okay. And that's, oh, we're going to get the chair out of here. It's going to struggle a little bit. It's struggling a little bit, but it's doing okay. Oh, oops. And so once we've got the subject selected, the next thing I'm going to do is I like to do, if we just copy paste this, Control C, Control V, how is our outline looking? That's pretty freaking good, honestly. That outline looks really good, honestly. Wow, it did a good job. That's something. One of the things that I'll often do is I'll do Select, Modify, Expand, and I'll expand it by like 2 pixels, and then Shift F6, Feather 2 pixels, and that gives just a little bit of a halo. A little bit of a halo, and then the other thing I like to do is Select, Modify, Smooth, which gets some of the little cragginess out of it and just smooths it out a little bit. So let's take a look at that. So here we've got just a little bit more of a blurry, smooth edge, which will blend a little better with the background. So we can then go over to our thumbnail and drop that in if we want to. But see, that's not a, where are we going to put that? That's not a great, that's not, that expression isn't saying anything. It's just me here. There we go. Perfect. Perfect. No, that's bad. Don't do that. There you go. That is how I make a thumbnail. That's it. And if you go back and you look at my channel, you will see those same principles mostly being applied, right? Facial expression, product shot. Facial expression, object in the foreground. Big facial expression here. This is pretty bad. This is a pretty bad thumbnail. Just 2 cameras. And that would have been better if I'd had my face in it, but that just takes a little bit more work. Same here. You know, so I don't do it every time, but yeah, there you go. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope it's been helpful. Oh, hey, one more tip. Don't put anything important in the lower right corner of your thumbnail, because that's where the time goes, and it will always get covered up. Depending on, I mean, it's not always this big because these thumbnails are really small, but YouTube always puts this time in the lower right, so you would not want to put like text down here. There you go. Thanks for watching. Happy flying. What are you doing in here? The least you could do is subscribe or join my Patreon, or like just here's another video I picked out for you. Jeez.